Thank you for your practice. Okay, so tonight I want to talk about the topic of faith. And faith has the potential to be a difficult topic for some people, and even a difficult word for a lot of people. One of my teachers, Andrew Chapman, calls faith the F word, which I think is particularly funny. In America, and especially in the South, religion is kind of thrust upon us before we even really know what it means to have a religion or the connotations of what that means. We're just born into it. And here in Pensacola, we're in the buckle of the Bible Belt, pretty much. So you'd be hard-pressed to drive even a mile down the road without seeing a church. They're basically on pretty much like every corner. And when I was a kid, my grandmother used to take me to church all the time, under much duress, I might add. I did not want to go. I wanted to enjoy my Sunday, and when I wasn't at school, and I wanted to play. But I would go to church, and it was a weird experience for me because I just never felt what it seemed like everybody else felt at church. I just never really felt the spirit, I guess. I guess that's what you would call it in the Christian church. Everybody else seemed very, very taken by what was going on, but it just never really resonated with me. And it just seemed like something was a little off, and I couldn't quite get on board with it. And then growing up, I grew up here, and we have a lot of the roadside preachers here that, stand on the corner and proselytize to everybody driving by and tell us that we're all going to go to hell unless we repent and take Jesus into our hearts. And there's a lot of just blind faith in the Christian practice. And I could never get on board with blind faith. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's my personality, but I couldn't get on board with that. And the funny thing about the roadside preachers is when I was growing up, I used to think that happened everywhere. Like I thought that was just a common thing that happened in like every town in the U.S. And then as I started to travel more, playing music for a living and things like that, I came to realize that that's here. I've literally never seen that anywhere else but here. Like this is the only place I've ever seen that. And the reason I bring this up is because for the longest time I always associated faith with religion. I think they're pretty synonymous. If I ask you what faith means to you, like if I say the word faith, what comes to mind? You could say it out loud.
Religion. Believe in something. Hope.
Good. That's good answers. So, yeah, it's all of those things, right? Faith can mean all of those things. So tonight I want to talk about what faith is from a Buddhist perspective, the importance of having faith on this path, and some ways that we can cultivate our own sense of faith in this practice. Joseph Goldstein reminds us that faith is not blind belief, but it's the willingness to see. And if we're talking about faith in this practice, we're not talking about blind faith or adherence to any kind of dogma. Faith in the Buddhist practice means something more like confidence. We have confidence in our ability to awaken and transform ourselves through this practice, and we also have confidence in the practice itself. In fact, faith is such an important part of this practice because it's actually one of the 5 spiritual faculties or 5 spiritual powers. The other 4 are effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And I might do a talk on all of those. But tonight I just want to focus on the first, which is faith, or in the Pali translation is sada. And faith isn't something that can be forced or manufactured. People can go, you just have to believe. Like, well, if you don't believe, you just don't believe. And you can't force belief. It just doesn't work that way. Faith arises naturally when we begin to see the benefits of this practice in our own lives. When we witness the fruits of this practice in our own experience, we develop a sense of trust in the teachings of the Buddha and of other Dharma teachers. The Buddha said in the Kalama Sutta, he said, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. Do not believe anything because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders, but after observation and analysis. When you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." So basically the Buddha said, don't even believe him. This is a path of experience, direct experience. So why should we have faith in this practice? Well, because without faith, we can't really truly engage with the practice itself. The Buddha said that faith is the beginning of this path. It's the foundation upon which we build our practice. And having faith in the practice is crucial to our engagement with this path. Without faith, we can't commit to it fully or trust in the potential of our own minds to awaken. Jack Kornfield said that faith means realizing that we don't have to know everything right now. We don't have to have all the answers. We have a capacity to open to mystery, to trust our own direct experience and inquiry. And there's this Pali term, it's ehipassiko. Pali is basically the language that the first teachings of the Buddha were recorded in. It's like a kind of the lower caste version of Sanskrit. It's a long dead language that nobody uses unless you're a Dharma teacher, basically. So, there's this word ehipassiko, and it means to come and see. So we're not asking you to believe anything in this practice. We're asking you to come and see for yourself. If you apply these teachings in the way that they are laid out, if you live by the Eightfold Path, and you use these practices, you will see the efficacy in your life. And that's been the case for me, because when I first started with this practice, I didn't have much faith that it was going to change my life. I was like, nah, whatever. I associated, again, faith with religion, as I think most people do. And I didn't have faith that this was going to have any major impact on my life. And that was absolutely, completely wrong. Like, this practice has transformed my life, 100%. Merely 5 years ago, I was a homeless heroin addict in New Orleans. And it is through these teachings and through this path that I've found not only my sobriety, but also rebuilt my life from the ground up. And I owe most of it to this practice, if I'm being quite honest. And so faith and confidence means trusting in these teachings, trusting in the teachings of the Buddha, trusting in the teachings of other Dharma teachers, and knowing that they offer a path that has been tried and tested for 2,600 years. This isn't a new thing. We hear about mindfulness all the time, and it's kind of been like a buzzword for like the past 10 years or so. I call it the McMindfulness movement. But they kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater with that, because there's a lot more to this path than just mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is a good place to start, because without being mindful, the rest of the teachings don't go anywhere. If we're not actively being mindful of the way that we interact with the world, we can't really benefit from these teachings. But faith in this practice also means having confidence in our innate potential for wisdom, compassion, and to awaken. Buddha, when we hear the word Buddha, we often think of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. But the word Buddha just means the one who woke up, the awakened one. So if we're talking about Buddhism, we're really just talking about wake-upism. When we talk about taking refuge in the Buddha, we're really taking refuge in ourselves and our own capacity to awaken. When we have faith in ourselves, we are more likely to persevere on this path, through the difficulties that will arise in our lives and just with this practice and in general. We just persevere. We have this confidence in these teachings. So how do we go about cultivating more faith in this practice? Well, first we have to understand that faith, again, isn't something that can be forced or manufactured. It's an ongoing process that requires commitment and patience. Nothing happens overnight. The Buddha grew up in an agricultural community. We're talking about 2,600 years ago in India. There was a lot of agriculture. And in these teachings, there's a lot of references to agricultural terms because that was the language that he knew. He grew up in a farming community. So we use this word cultivate a lot. But one way to cultivate faith is to develop a consistent meditation practice. There was no word for meditation in the original teachings of the Buddha. The word was bhavana, which means to cultivate. So we cultivate this practice. We cultivate healthier mind states through our meditation practice. Through mindfulness, we cultivate the ability to be in the present moment. We also work in this, especially in the Theravada lineage and all Buddhist lineages, but in this group in particular, I teach a lot of what are called the Brahma Viharas. And the Brahma Viharas translate as divine abodes. So it's like the dwelling of God. And it's these four qualities of metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. Metta means loving kindness. We can be kind to everyone. We don't have to love everyone, but I think we can all be kind to everyone. Karuna means compassion. Compassion is the heart's wise response to pain. When we see others in pain, it's that quivering of the heart that happens. Mudita is sympathetic joy, which means taking joy in the joy of others. It's finding happiness in other people's happiness. The Dalai Lama has this quote that I throw around all the time because I love it so much. And he says, if we only find joy in our own joy, then we're missing out on 7 billion other opportunities for happiness. And upekkha, which means equanimity. And equanimity is a kind of like a really Buddhist-y word that we don't really use a lot outside of these kind of groups. But it really just means centered, kind of right in the middleness. It's not being reactive. It's not being inactive. It's being right in the middle. So it's being able to be with the experiences of life and responding appropriately. So, as I said, we cultivate these qualities. We cultivate these Brahma Viharas. We cultivate our ability to be mindful. We cultivate our attention, and we cultivate our concentration. And through meditation, we can observe the workings of our mind and begin to see the benefits of the practice in our daily lives. And regular practice is key to developing confidence in this path. When we practice consistently, we see the benefits of the practice and our confidence in the path grows stronger. As I said, when I first started with the Buddhist path, I had already been meditating for several years, but I did it as a form of escapism at that point. There was no investigation going on for me at that point. It was merely just to escape the present moment. And it worked really well for a while. But then when that meditation session was over, I always had to come back to reality, and reality was still, for lack of a better term, pretty fucked up for me at that point. And so I was like, wait, maybe I should look more into these teachings and see what they have to offer. And we don't need to practice for hours every day. You don't have to sit on the cushion for 5 hours a day or 2 hours a day or even an hour a day, even 20 minutes a day. If you can commit to 20 minutes a day, and you can split it up. You can do 10 in the morning and 10 at night. But if you can commit to 20 minutes a day, you will start to see the benefits of this practice in your life. It will take patience. As I said, it will not happen overnight, but you will see the benefits. Jack Kornfield says that faith arises as we see the fruits of our practice in our own lives. And again, if you commit to a dedicated practice, you will start to see the fruits of this practice in your own lives. Another way that we can build confidence or faith in this practice is by studying the teachings. One of the best ways to increase our confidence is to study the Buddha's teachings. And we can read suttas, or we can listen to Dharma talks like this one. We can attend classes and workshops, as all of you are doing right now. And as we learn more about the Dharma, we become more confident in our practice, and our trust in this path grows and grows stronger. And that's one of the things that really, really helped me a lot when I was first beginning on this path and in the Buddhist practice, was just listening to Dharma talks. There's tons of Dharma talks available. If you have an iPhone or an Android, if you have a phone or a computer, you have access to millions of Dharma talks. And if anybody wants to know where they can find some good ones, I'm more than happy to tell you all the best podcasts that I enjoy, where you can listen to all the Dharma talks that you could possibly stomach, because you'll never be able to get through all of them, because there's literally millions of them. Another way that we can develop our faith in this practice is by reflecting on our own experiences. We can increase our confidence by reflecting on our experiences with the practice and with the way that it changes our lives. By examining the changes that we've seen, such as our increased mindfulness, reduced reactivity, that's a big one. Greater inner peace, also pretty big. We can see the benefits of this practice firsthand. And these experiences can reinforce our confidence and inspire us to continue on this path. It can reinforce our commitment once we start seeing some of these benefits. I know it did for me. Like, just the reduced reactivity alone. I used to be a real hothead. And I still have my moments, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect by any means. I am an insane person sometimes, but I'm far less insane than I used to be. And I directly owe that to this practice, and the sense of inner peace. Shit, man. Like, the turmoil that used to live in my head was profound. It was just kind of like a wide awake nightmare sometimes. You ever just lay down on the pillow and you just have one of those heads that just won't shut up? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, me too. Or I did. Now, no problem. That's one area that I can definitely say has improved 100% with this path. My thoughts used to literally keep me up at night. And through the training of this practice, you just turn the volume down. Doesn't mean that they're not there, but it means that I don't have to give them that much attention. Another way that we can build confidence and faith in this path is by seeking out supportive communities. You've already done that. You're in one. This is a room full of support. A lot of people here come here every week. And I think that people come here so frequently because they do see the efficacy of this practice. They do see the benefits. Being a part of a supportive community can help us develop our practice. And by connecting with other people that are on this path, we can share our experiences and learn from each other. We don't have a Buddhist temple. We have one, but they don't speak English. So good luck getting any advice from them. So we have to lean on each other. And that's what this community is for. This Sangha is the Pali word for community. This community is, we lean on each other. Because in this path, things can get difficult. When we start to sit with the mind and observe the mind, it gets pretty hectic sometimes. And it's very, very helpful to have people to reach out to. And that's exactly why I started this group. Something like this didn't exist here. And I didn't have the Sangha that I wanted. So the only recourse was to build it. So that's what I did. And that's what I'm still doing. And thank you all for being part of my Sangha. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're all my friends.
If you build it, they will come.
Indeed. And they have. The Buddha said that the Sangha is the whole of the Dharma. Not part of it, the whole of it. That we can do this on our own, but if we have the opportunity to sit with Sangha, to definitely take that opportunity. Another way that we can increase our faith in this practice is by embracing doubt, which I know sounds kind of counterintuitive. But doubt is a natural part of this path, and it's important to acknowledge it and embrace it. By examining our doubts and our fears, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our practice. We can also seek guidance from teachers and mentors that can help us work through our doubts in ourselves and our doubts in this path. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair in front of all of you right now if I didn't have some really, really good teachers that I can call on whenever doubt still arises. Because it still does. I don't doubt in this path anymore. I have nothing but faith in this path. But self-doubt still arises, for sure, from time to time. But even that's far less than it used to be. So we can cultivate faith by studying and reflecting on these teachings and developing a meditation practice and coming to groups like this and just opening ourselves up to this path and this process. And the Buddha said that this path is not easy for those attached to pleasure and distracted by worldly affairs, which is true. And it's one of the biggest points of this path is to decrease our distractions from worldly affairs, to stop clinging to sense pleasures, to go inward. All things of the world are conditioned. All conditioned things are impermanent. So if we derive our sense of happiness from conditioned things that are impermanent, what does that say about our sense of happiness? Also impermanent, right? So true happiness and true peace comes from within. It's the only place you'll find it. We have to be willing to take risks and step outside of our comfort zones with this practice. It means doing the hard things and exploring the parts of ourselves that we generally don't want to acknowledge. Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. There's this interesting story about King Arthur and his search for the Grail. And I don't know if any of you believe in King Arthur or even believe in the Grail. I don't know how much I believe in either of those things. But there's a funny, it's kind of a good story about it. It's really relevant to this topic, and especially this part of this topic. So when the Knights of the Round Table set about to find the Grail, they all went into the forest in the place that they perceived as being the darkest. If you want to find the Grail, you got to go into the darkest places. And so we can talk about the Grail, or we can talk about awakening, and we can talk about self-actualization. I think it's all kind of the same thing. We want to get to the core of ourselves. If we want to integrate our shadow, so to speak, we have to go into these dark places. And waking up is not something that can be forced or rushed either. It's a gradual process that unfolds over time as we deepen our understanding of the nature of reality and the nature of our own minds. And that's what we do with this meditation practice. And there's a lot more to Buddhism than just meditation. And there's a lot more to the Dharma than just meditation. And you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice the Dharma. It can be any religion. The Buddha didn't teach Buddhism. The Buddha taught the Dharma. In fact, the Buddha was very specific about, hey, don't make this a religion. Oops. I guess when things work as well as this does, people cling to it. He also said some pretty strong stuff about not clinging to things, but oh well. Joseph Goldstein says that waking up is a journey, not a destination. And Nirvana, awakening, isn't something to attain. There's nothing to attain. There's nothing to chase after. It's already here. It's the water that we're swimming in. We have direct access to this at all times. And each one of you have touched it several times in your lives. Probably every day. you've reached a state of nibbana or awakening every day. You just didn't realize it. So yeah, let's have faith in this practice. Confidence in this practice. Confidence in ourselves that we can commit to this practice. And confidence that we can wake up. You know? So I've talked about what faith means from a Dharma perspective. I've talked about why it's important to have faith when you're committing to this path. And I've talked excessively about ways that we can develop more faith in this path. So I hope that something in this talk has resonated for you. I hope that something has landed and that you've found some value in it. So